In this video, I'll be comparing the autofocus of the Canon C70 with the Canon R6. And I'll also be evaluating its high ISO performance against both the R6 and the Panasonic GH5S, which is filming me now. So in all the tests coming up, I had the C70 and the R6 recording in their 4K, UHD, 10-bit, 422 long op modes at 25 frames per second. The R6 was in C-Log and the C70 in C-Log 2. All I did in post was apply Canon's standard 709 conversion LUT. As for lenses, on the R6, I was using the Sigma Art 50mm f1.4, and on the C70, I was using the Sigma Art 18-35 at 35mm. I manually set the white balance to the same value on both cameras, and the autofocus speed and response settings were at their default values. So let's run the autofocus test and I'll tell you which camera was which after you've seen it. So in that clip, camera A was the R6 and camera B was the C70. And as for the autofocus, the two cameras perform, at least in my opinion, almost identically. And that's unfortunate because compared to a similar test I did a while back on the C200 with the same lens, albeit under different lighting conditions, there's really no comparison. The C200 is much smoother. Now, from an image quality perspective in these shots, straight out of camera you can see that the C-Log 2 profile is much flatter than the regular C-Log on the R6. So much so that initially I had to check that the R6 was in fact in C-Log, because by comparison it looked like a 709 image. One thing I did notice on the vector scope was that the test card's colour chips line up perfectly on the C70, whereas with the R6 you can clearly see that the red channel pushes a little towards magenta, and cyan pushes more towards blue. But the 10-bit footage from both of these cameras responds really well to tweaking, so if you want to spend some more time lining them up, then you shouldn't have any problems. Okay, now for a high ISO test. This shot right now is coming from the Panasonic GH5S in V-Log-L, and it's actually quite dark in here, so I've already got my ISO set to 3200. So I'm going to switch over to the R6 at 3200, and then the C70 again at 3200. Now let's put them side by side and introduce the GH5S. Now let's ramp up the ISO to 6400. Then 12800. 25,600, and this is the GH5's highest ISO setting. 51,200. At 102,400, we've now reached the C70's highest ISO setting. And at 204,800, the R6 is the last man standing. Certainly up to 6,400, they all look great. The GH5S, even though it's nearly 4 years old and has a tiny micro four thirds sensor, is no slouch. The C70 is ultra clean up to 6,400. The R6 looks clean up to 12,800. The only surprise for me in this test was how quickly the C70 goes downhill. By 12,800, it's really no better than the GH5S. If you have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, please let me know in the comments, but that's really all I've got for you today. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.